Hey everybody, welcome back. So, we're going to talk about divorce because I'm done. I've had it. I've snapped. I debunked some of the main myths of feminism and explained how they've actually very largely backfired on women and on male-female dynamics in general a couple episodes ago. And of course, I got the usual reactions. I've got some losers in there who didn't actually listen to the full context and thought that I was somehow playing victim. I had a super low T vegan pop in, and he kept leaving comments that were like 30 pages long, and I'd only read like a paragraph, and I knew he was a vegan from like the very first comment, and it took 3 before he actually said it, which is like shocking for a vegan. But kept talking about the patriarchy, and we don't live in a patriarchy any longer, and anyone who believes that we do is a dipshit at this point. But I wanted to go into some marriage statistics and discuss a little bit of the history of divorce, because it's not the patriarchy, guys. We live in the matriarchal hellscape of doom, and the history of divorce shows it. And of course, I had a baseline like gut instinct. I didn't know, but I knew that divorce was started by the feminists. And then of course I go and read the history of divorce and started by the feminists. So welcome back to the Green Eyed Girl podcast. All right, so the history of the United States divorce. So when we were the English colonies, not even just the U.S., prior to, when it was just the English colonies, they were viewing marriage as a civil contract instead of a holy union between man and woman and God. Okay? So marriage is rooted, real, true marriage is a covenant with God. It's a man and a woman making vows to God to stay together in front of those that are closest to them, who will hold them accountable to that covenant. That's marriage. So, of course, the United States, why not start it the same way it is right now, right? It's just civil contract. Right? Marriage doesn't actually have anything to do with the state. I know that's shocking. So I've seen there was a guy that was on Pearl's podcast at one point that said he was married, and they looked it up and they're like, well, you're not married. The state says you're not married. Back in the day, marriages were recorded in the family Bible. It didn't actually have anything to do with the state. The state got involved for the same reason the state always gets involved, to muck around and make money. Okay? Which is also, shockingly, why young men don't want to get married anymore. Just common sense here, folks. Let's start letting it click. So, between 1692 and 1786, there were only 90 divorces granted between England and Wales entirely, versus the 143 granted just in the Massachusetts colony. Okay, so the U.S., we already started out bad. This is back when we're colonies. It was already bad. So fast forward. When the colonies gained independence, the Union liberalized their divorce laws, as did the Associated Territories, with many permitting local courts to grant divorce. So shocking. We already started out bad. Finally got freedom, started out bad. So fast forward into the 19th century, and background of why this triggered to me is I'm reading the book Hollywood Babylon, and the majority of it takes place in the early 20s in the founding of Hollywood and all of the actors. And I was just floored at the number of divorces that I'm seeing. Because I guess in my mind, thinking back, it used to not be that way. But there's a lot of similarities between the frivolous, disgusting nature in the 1920s and the frivolous, disgusting nature of today. History's cyclical, and apparently we learned nothing. So that's why I started looking into this. So we get into the 19th century in the US, and divorces were mainly in the middle and upper classes because they were expensive. But then, of course, we made the legal processes less expensive so that it could be easier. Shock. Just shocked. Because there was a popular acceptance of divorce as an alternative to marital unhappiness, decay in belief in immorality, and future punishment. Sound like today at all? That sounds like today to me. And this is in the 1800s. It's pretty bad. So, by 1890, 3 couples per 1,000 were divorced, rising to 8 by the 20s, the 1920s. So 8 out of every 1,000 people was getting divorced in the 1920s. It's a big jump. Now here's where it got real fun and real interesting. The women's rights movement debated issues on whether to allow divorce, with Jane Swishman and Elizabeth Cady Stanton as early supporters, with Horace Greeley and Annette Brown Blackwell opposed. Unlike other issues, the movement was unable to achieve agreement. Stanton eventually came to see marriage law reform as more important than women's voting rights. Again, how shocked are we that the feminist movement is the culprit? The communist, atheist, anti-God movement that was the women's rights movement against marriage, the covenant between a man, woman, and God. I'm just shocked. Not. So, of course, part of the group decided that destroying marriage was more important than women having a say in the government. And I'm sure a bunch of people out here are going to say, oh, but marriage was just so unhappy and blah, blah, blah. No. Communists don't believe in God. They tend to be Satanists, as a matter of fact. So why not destroy the thing that creates civilization and society at its peak? The thing that makes children and makes children better. Why not destroy it? Why not destroy the basis of society and morality? Fast forward to the 20th century. Civil courts refused to grant divorce except if one party in the marriage had betrayed the innocent spouse. Thus, a spouse suing for divorce in most states had to show fault, abandonment, cruelty, incurable mental illness, or adultery. Okay? So if your husband went and cheated, you could file for divorce, so long as you could prove it. If an innocent husband and wife wished to separate, or if both were guilty, neither would be allowed to escape the bonds of marriage. kind of like these rules, guys, because a lot of stuff can actually be worked through. Most marital issues can be worked through. You just have to actually be willing to be freaking married. That's how this works. By 1909, Reno, Nevada was the divorce capital of the world. How shocked am I that it's freaking Nevada? You sit there, you can go get married in Vegas, but at least you can get divorced in Reno. Nevada's hospitality industry accepted the residents' uncorroborated assertions of grounds for divorce, usually extreme cruelty. In 1927, Nevada's legislature, in response to a perceived threat to Reno's divorce supremacy from France and Mexico and divorce trade war that would be going on since the end of World War I between Nevada, Idaho, and Arkansas, lowered the residency period to 3 months. So fast forward to 1942, the Supreme Court ruled in Williams versus North Carolina that states actually had to recognize the divorces under the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution. So Reno, Nevada made it really easy to get divorced, and then the Supreme Court forced that on everyone. So if you went and moved to Nevada for 3 months, you could nullify your marriage and then go back to wherever you were, and they had to accept it. It's pretty wild. By the 1960s, it's always the 60s, guys. Please go read Chaos. So much wild shit happens in the 60s. Deception to bypass the fault system had become a widespread concern, if not actually a widespread practice. And the consensus grew for change. The National Association of Women's Lawyers was instrumental in convincing the American Bar Association to create the family law section of the states. Again, guys, the feminist strike. Why is it always the feminists? Why does the feminist movement want to destroy everything that protects women? Why? Why do they want to destroy the family unit? Could it possibly be that they seek to destroy the country? Maybe, just maybe. Because on the next episode, we're going to get into single mom statistics and how many single moms end up with children post-divorce that they fight for. So the introduction of no-fault divorce led to a rise in divorce rates during the 70s. From 1975 to 1988 in the U.S., in families with children present, wives filed for divorce approximately 2/3 of cases. So 2/3 of the divorces because of moms. It's because of the wives. In 1975, it was 71.4% women filing, and it dropped down to 65% filing by 1988. Now, they used some data out of California from 77 to 78. And it reported that 1 year after divorce, the standard of living for women decreased 73%. So 2/3 of the divorces are filed by women, and their standard of living dropped 73%. And the men's standard of living increased by 42%. So women really bought into this hard and were divorcing their husbands to destroy their whole lives, and their husbands got the better end of the deal. I think somebody fell for a psyop, guys. I think a whole lot of people fell for a psyop. I'm pulling all of this off of Wikipedia, by the way. I just went ahead and pulled straight from here because it's a little easier to just kind of skim through and read. Now, someone else checked his methodology. So Richard Peterson went back and checked Weissman's methodology and calculated it was actually a 27% decrease for women and a 10% increase for men. So either way, women are still, they're filing for divorce more, and they're still having a decrease in their standard of living, while the men who are getting blindsided are getting better. It's pretty bad. Let's go into the 21st century. As of 2014, 11 years is the median length of a marriage, and 90% of the divorces were settled out of court. Lower income couples are more likely to get divorced. then higher income. That's not that surprising. Money struggles are always one of the biggest fights in marriage. By the 7th wedding anniversary, divorce rates amongst highly educated people who married in the early 2000s was 11%, while couples without a college degree was 17%. But, all up, all in, guys. Divorce. No-fault divorce. Brought to you by the feminist movement. They really wanted to destroy nuclear families. Women are the number one drivers of divorce. 2/3 of divorces to this day are pushed for by the women. They take the biggest hit. Their life sucks afterwards. And the men's life get better for the most part. But of course, when children are involved, we know that that's not the case. We know the women take a hit, but we also know that the women weaponize their children to get back at the men for their decrease in their bad decision making. Right? So, ponder on why on earth the feminists want to destroy the lives of women for the upteenth time. Because the feminist movement is really like the worst thing that could happen to women and just destroys their lives all up, all in. Case in point is me. I'm writing a book. You guys will get that. And part of why I'm covering this is because you're getting the topics I'm covering in my book. But yeah, so women are the drivers of divorce. They were the drivers behind no-fault divorce, because actually having cause to divorce your husband apparently is actually really hard to come by. So it had to be pushed as no fault because women just want out for no better reason than, but I just do. It's getting old. And when the kids get involved, it's really bad. So on the next episode, I'm going to cover some statistics on single mother households, because it ain't pretty. Sorry to bring a whole bunch of doom and gloom, but let's be real, we need to end feminism where it stands, because the conservative movement right now has become like girl boss central, and I'm sorry guys, where feminism goes, there's rot. And I'm watching the conservative movement being taken over by a bunch of feminists. And I'm over it. So I want to make sure everyone understands all of the destruction that feminism is wreaking in everyday life. And make sure everybody knows that the new conservative movement girl boss bullshit needs to end. Hope you all have a fantastic day.